G'day guys, welcome to Strictly Sega. We have a lot of games to cover and we've all been talking about it, and we decided to get back into what we love the most.
Fighters.
2 or 3D. We really don't care. As long as we get to wail on each other, it's all good.
So we've got a heap of fighter games here, and if you have the time, we'd like to show you a few. Also, Grub has a bit of a bone to pick and one more after that, but let's get started. The bell is ringing, it's time to kick it off with Last Bronx.
Now, any arcade visitor who remembers way back when it was still safe for an all-night lock-in will have fond memories of Last Bronx, and although it didn't clock as many hours compared to, say, Street Fighter 2, it still had a certain sparkle about it.
Last Bronx is also known as Tokyo Bangaichi in Japan. It's a weapons-based fighter game from AM3, who are a research and development team within Sega's Amusement Machines division, which we covered last episode.
Talk about good timing. To a lot of gamers, this was like a bolt of lightning from the heavens above. Last Bronx really appeared to have the whole package handed to them on a silver platter. At the time, AM3's quality motion capture system seriously eclipsed almost anything released within that time period by a country mile.
And this achievement really put them at the cutting edge, all by fully utilising Sega's Model 2 mainboard. Tecmo and AM2 also utilised this mainboard for games like Dead or Alive, Virtua Fighter 2 and Fighting Vipers.
Due to this game's great timing, in June 1996 this game was given the distinction of being the first full motion captured weapons fighting game in Japanese game centres, nearly a full year before System 12's Soul Edge.
Home versions were even produced for the PlayStation, the Saturn and PC systems. Whilst the Saturn port was graphically inferior to its arcade counterpart, the port featured new game modes, options, extra characters, remixed music and exclusive video sequences.
It's incredible to think that the games remained popular and kept gamers interested for nearly a decade now, especially considering the leaps and bounds technology has taken since its release. Last Bronx was also novelised and serialised into comics, a radio drama for the Japanese market, and was also made into a live-action movie by Takashi Shimizu.
So popular had this game become that they even made a doco based on the motion capture process to make this game, and in 2006 they released the 10th anniversary edition of Tokyo Bangaichi on the PlayStation 2.
Despite what the title suggests, this game does not take place in the Bronx, New York, but in fact it's set in a future Tokyo, during a period of time where the economy has fallen apart. So a fighting tournament solely between the leaders of rival gangs has been ordered to determine who would gain control of the city.
The secret tournament is called The Last Bronx, with the stages set in real Tokyo City areas, giving the player a sense of virtual space within the environment.
Last Bronx features heaps of gameplay modes. It has arcade, versus, a special Saturn mode, survival, time attack, aerial combo mode, plus a regular practice mode for mastering the combos. Plus, it also has an option to view any movies or portraits you've opened up along the way.
Each match is the best out of 3-round fight, with victory by either knockout or remaining health at the end of a 30-second time limit.
Thankfully, AM3 stuck to the tried and true PKG 3-button system introduced by AM2 in Virtua Fighter. Punch weapon, kick, guard, with certain joystick and button combinations resulting in special and combination attacks.
The G button is used to block attacks and to perform a feint attack called an attack cancel. Strong attacks, throws and rolling moves can be performed using different button combinations. They even included a taunt function to really get up your opponent's nose.
We found it amazing how much AM3 was able to impart a sense of fluid movement into each character, which of course had a lot to do with the quality of the motion capture used for the moves, giving the player a good sense of viciousness in regards to how the characters executed their devastating moves.
Last Bronx still features way too many flaws for it to be considered a solid fighting game though. For instance, even if you have a life gauge meter set up to maximum, the attacks are way too powerful and just do too much damage. I mean, fair enough, in real life, if someone gets hit in the head with a huge sledgehammer or a wooden sword, you might be knocked out with a few blows. But that doesn't have to be the case in a video game. Many times you will find yourself with a huge advantage over your opponent and end up copping a slaughtering comeback by them connecting just 2 or 3 clean hits.
In all honesty, there's some good sides and some not so good sides when it comes to the graphics in this game. Now, first and foremost, it's always good to see a Saturn game running at a high-res 740 by 480. And at 60 frames a second, I seem to notice that the backgrounds flowed with an incredibly even pace. What do you reckon?
I found some glitches in the graphics, but they're small problems. I mean, you've just got polygon dropout and slow down. Especially with the poses at the start of each fight and also at the end.
Yeah.
But there wasn't any problems really during the actual gameplay, and you wouldn't really notice it unless you were looking for it.
As far as the sound goes, the music is fairly average except for the one good closing track, which isn't too bad at all. The characters' voices are clear and understandable, with apparently well-known Japanese actors doing the voiceover work for the characters.
Even though our copy of the game is from Japan, the voices during the fighting are in English, which was a great surprise for us.
The final result is that this game is not a lot different to a lot of polygon-based fighting games out there, regardless of the decent graphics, the great sound, and the alright gameplay. But the story does have an interesting plot to go with it.
If you're looking for a fun, weapons-based 3D fighter, and you have the tolerance for little graphical flaws, then Last Bronx is the game for you.
Last Bronx is a good fighting game, but there are better out there. Like this, Dead or Alive.
Dead or Alive was released into Japanese arcades in 1996 and onto the international market a short time later. Whilst initially a success in Japan, this game was not so well received in other markets, mainly due to the rising popularity of games like Tekken, which was a huge hit for the PlayStation upon its release. So with that in mind, let's explore the differences between the original arcade version and later ports of the game to various consoles on the market.
Dead or Alive utilised Sega's Model 2 arcade board, which by the way was the first time Sega licensed out their hardware to a third party, Tecmo in this case. They did brilliantly with the design and publication of this game. Featuring simplistic commands, it relied on its incredibly fast reaction times and smooth counter moves. The original arcade version used pure 3D on all its arenas, giving the gamer an incredible sense of three-dimensional awareness.
Much like in Virtua Fighter 2, it was impossible to achieve these kind of graphics on Sega Saturn hardware, and both games, as a result, were scaled down. Like most earlier arcade games ported to consoles, the necessity of using bitmap and overlays does reduce the visual experience of these games, as arcade versions utilised full 3D graphics, and consoles were just able to produce that sort of processing power, hence the necessity of utilising bitmap tricks and overlapping layers in the same fashion as the Sega Saturn version of Virtua Fighter 2 did, to give the impression of 3D.
Though, in our opinion, it didn't actually impact upon the gameplay a great deal. Even the Xbox version was a port of what Sega Saturn owners experienced, using bitmap tricks again. So, on that note, let's check it out.
You are one of the several different fighters all skilled in martial arts, competing in a competition known as the Dead or Alive tournament, held by a global corporation known as DOA Tech, which is an acronym for Dead or Alive Tournament Executive Committee. Their motives remain unknown, yet they hold these tournaments from Japan to the North Pole.
The first in a long series of continual storylines in future DOA games, DOA 1 introduces the characters and what motivates them to appear in the tournaments, i.e. profits or revenge. Although originally refreshing for its time, some of the storylines seem to be a bit recycled.
Click here for part 2.